Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Be a Friend Friday. Today, I am very excited to welcome our guests, Rhodes and Alana Ritenour. They are two authors of a wonderful new children's book, which takes place with a type 1 diabetic. And I'm really excited to kind of hear their story and hear how this all came to be. So, without further ado, Rhodes and Alana, can you please introduce yourselves and just let us know a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely, Marley. Thank you so much for having us. It's great to be here. It's always great to do work with the American Diabetes Association. As you said, my name is Rhodes Ritenour, and my connection with diabetes is I was diagnosed on October the 10th, 1983, as a 5-year-old, 2 weeks into kindergarten. And so that's where my journey started. And shortly after I got out of the hospital and got to managing my disease at home with my parents' help, I started working with the American Diabetes Association, actually stuffing envelopes for a fundraising campaign that was running out of its Charlottesville, Virginia office. And so that's sort of where my work and my volunteerism with the American Diabetes Association started. And it's continued over the years with walks and being part of the Legal Advocacy Network and the Advocacy Committee. And so it's been a joy, and it's also been heartwarming and helpful to know that organizations like the American Diabetes Association are working so hard for those of us in the diabetes community. Work for a major health system, and we live in Richmond, Virginia. And we're really excited to be here to talk to you about the adventures of Rhodes and Alana and School Bus Secret.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. My name is Alana Ritenour. I'm Rhodes' wife, and I have been volunteering with the American Diabetes Association since marrying him 15 years ago. So it has definitely become a family affair and a commitment to improving the lives of people with diabetes. And we, as he said, live in Richmond and have 2 children.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you both for joining me. I forgot to mention that I am also a type 1 diabetic. So listening to you and hearing other stories is always so exciting for me because I find that a lot of times we overlap in different, parts of our journeys. So can you walk me through a little bit of like what your diagnosis journey was like and what was going through your mind when all of this happened?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have no family history, at least of type 1 diabetes in my family. So I had the telltale signs. Was very thirsty, was drinking a lot of water, was going to the bathroom more than I thought I should be. I was lethargic. And so we went to see my pediatrician about 25 miles from my home, and he would not even let us go home. He admitted us to the hospital right away. Back then, they would not send you home from the hospital until you felt comfortable managing the disease with your parents. And so I spent 2 whole weeks in the hospital. I did not go into DKA, thank God, through the diagnosis. So we got home and we got to managing it. And, I was welcomed with open arms back into my kindergarten class by my friends, and I'll never forget that. You have something that happens to you like this, a chronic condition, which I know we'll talk about more throughout the interview, but you never know how you're going to be perceived. But it was nothing but support from my classmates, from my teachers, coaches, people at church, all those folks that interacted sort of in our orbit in our small town were very supportive. It really has made management for me a lot more doable over the last 39 years, almost 40 years. It's amazing to see in my journey how far we've come, thanks in large part to organizations like the American Diabetes Association. When I got home, I was using a vial and syringes to draw pork insulin and then giving myself a shot. I was sticking my finger about 9 or 10 times a day. In the last 39 years, I've taken about 25,000 insulin injections and pricked my finger more than 90,000 times. Marley. And so the thing that was really interesting, when I would stick my finger, I would put my blood on a strip, and then we would take a cotton ball and wipe off the strip and then wait some time and then actually compare the color of the strip to the colors on the back of the vial. Fast forward to this very day when I'm wearing a continuous glucose monitor, and I can wear it for 10 days, measures my blood sugar every 5 minutes, and then I'm wearing an insulin pump that can talk to, in a closed loop, the continuous glucose monitor. So it's incredible how in my journey it's gone. The technology, the advancement, all those wonderful people doing research, all those people funding that research. But we do have a long way to go, and we're just really hopeful that we can cure this disease, type 1, and we can continue to work on type 2 as well in the coming years.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've seen so much innovation in the last 40 years since your diagnosis. Even I've seen it, and I've only been diagnosed for the last 20. And so as you mentioned, a CGM. I also wear a CGM, but I've only been wearing it for the last few years. And so that's even completely changed the game for me personally, and hopefully, many out there as well. What kind of advice would you give to anyone newly diagnosed with type 1, or even parents of children newly diagnosed?
Yeah, Marla, we've seen a lot more diagnosis these days, and we don't really know why, but it's definitely proliferated. We gave a copy of our book to a library, and we found out through the school nurse there were actually 10 children in that single elementary school that have type 1 diabetes.
Wow.
And I have been very blessed all along to have a great support system and access to providers and access to the right insulins and the insulin pump. I guess I would say to any kid, and Alana and I are called quite a bit when people around the Richmond area, and now through our national online diabetes support group, we actually hear from people across the country who are newly diagnosed and ask us this very question. They feel lost. They don't know where to turn. They don't know what resources are out there. They didn't go to med school or a nursing school, and so they wonder how they're going to manage their child's chronic condition. And boy, do we have a special place in our heart for families that are helping a type 1. You see the T1D moms all the time who are just working so hard. Mama bears that aren't sleeping, that have the CGM if they're lucky enough to have one on their phones, getting the alarms. So a few things that we try to tell those folks that we interact with, that we're blessed to work with, I should say. You got to stay positive, you got to stay proactive, and you got to stay persistent. You can't play the victim card. You can't think of yourself as a victim, but you got to think of yourself as someone who's empowered, especially if you have a strong support system around you to manage this chronic condition, because there's a lot of chronic conditions you can't manage. Another thing that we tell people is you will have hard days. There will be days where you feel isolated, where you feel insecure because you can't eat what other people are eating. You can't do some of the things that other people can do. You may feel insecure also about talking to people about your disease, which is such a big part of our book. But you got to be willing to share it. You'll end up in a very bad place if you don't ask for help and you don't tell people about your disease. And I've been blessed to always have Alana here, at least for the last 16 or 17 years, who understood, who compassionately was willing to talk about it and help me. And I'm very blessed, and I have another special place in my heart for those people who choose to help a diabetic, or even more so, choose to be married to one. That's a choice and not an easy one. But I can say to a person, since 1983, I have never had any person who I've shared my condition with say anything disparaging or not want to help. And so you may think that it sets you apart, particularly if you're an insecure, adolescent. But I think you'll find that there are a lot of good people out there who want to help you. I would also tell people you got to have hope. I've been told for a long, long time that we're right around the corner from curing type 1 diabetes. And now I think we actually are. You got to have hope that not only are we going to cure it in our lifetime, but certainly in our children's lifetimes. And we're going to learn how to live a lot better with the disease in the meantime.
And that's what being involved in the ADA has helped with, that hope, because we are at the events and hearing the good news of research and seeing the advocacy. And that's something we absolutely tell parents is please get involved in an organization and get involved in the ADA and learn about the resources and the events and meet members of this community, this club that you didn't want to join, but be part of it. And that's a great way to get resources, to develop connections with other people that are experiencing what you are.
You have to get involved with the ADA. I mean, you'll see people at walks that are going through the same thing. You'll see people at galas. You'll see people at our federal lobbying day, our amazing camps. You got to get involved with the ADA. That'll really, really put you in a lot better place. Well said, Alana.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the support system with either the friends in your life, the family in your life is huge. And then when you can find a community who is also going through the exact same thing, it can be life-changing. And that is exactly why, we have people like you guys and people all around our ADA community who are willing to share their story and want to connect with one another, because it's so important. Can you tell us a little bit about the book you both co-authored together?
Oh, we would love to. So we wrote The Adventures of Rhodes and Alana School Bus Secret together for an elementary age audience. Mm-hmm. And it tells the story of 8-year-old Rhodes and 8-year-old Alana. We've got some characters back here. You can see what they look like. But retelling a story of our meeting, essentially, and our first conversations about living with type 1. And so we have these 2 8-year-old kids that get into a sticky situation. They miss the school bus and they go, uh-oh, what now? And so they embark on a journey that turns into an adventure, because
always an adventure.
Two really excited and confident and fun kids, it's going to turn into an adventure. So they go on this adventure, and the result is they develop this amazing friendship. And also Rhodes, over the course of their journey, bravely shares his type 1 diagnosis with Alana, who, like me, knows nothing about diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
And so he tells her a little bit about what he needs and how she can be helpful. And the result is she embraces it with what we would hope of a friend. She's curious about disease, compassionate, and interested to jump in and be part of his support system. So that's the premise of the book.
Well, I absolutely love that premise, because I was diagnosed at 7 years old. So that really, ties into that point in my life where it would have been amazing to find a friend like Alana, who I trusted to, share my story and share my diagnosis. And so I love that you guys wrote this for that age group specifically. Was that always the goal? Did you have a goal of writing this book, or was there an idea to write this book, or did something happen that kind of spurred this on?
Yeah, Marley, I remember thinking, I really wish when I was 5 years old, or even after my diagnosis, that I had a resource like this, where it was a character in a book who was strong, who was confident, who was living life to the fullest with the the right safeguards and the right support and the right planning to be able to go on adventures, and who had a friend who he shared his disease with and who was compassionate and supportive. And about 10 years ago, we actually wrote the manuscript for School Bus Secret. And we've planned it as a series. We have ideas for about 20 more books. We have 4 that are actually written, and we're currently looking for a publisher for the next book and to perpetuate the series. But when we wrote these books 10 years ago, it was to provide a resource for specifically for newly diagnosed children. And life happened, and the book or the manuscript kept going back on the shelf, and we'd get it out and dust it off, and then it would go back on the shelf. And so we finally realized about a year and a half ago that our children were going to be 6 and 8 years old, which is our target audience. And what a shame it would be if we didn't actually publish the book.
Yeah, to really do something.
So we worked hard. Alana retired from practicing law to focus on a lot of things, but primarily publishing our book. And it was great to have a 6 and 8 year old in-house focus group. They really did respond to illustrations as we got them back, and copy as we edited it. And
so much feedback.
So we got a lot of feedback from our children, and we finally brought it to market in November. But what we've realized in publishing the book, and what we've certainly realized in the last 2 months in promoting it, is the book is really not about diabetes per se. Our primary audience is certainly diabetics. But we see the book as a resource that, with the proliferation of type 2 diabetes in our country, we see it as a book that a type 2 diabetic, a newly diagnosed type 2, could read to their children or to their grandchildren to help them understand about this new diagnosis of even type 2 and what those family members can do to support the type 2. Let's eat right together. Let's exercise together. Let's support each other. And the other thing that, it's been a real blessing in this is that Rhodes and Alana really stand for Rhodes' condition really stands for all chronic conditions in some way, whether it be food allergies or asthma or being on the autism spectrum. And his willing to share that and Alana's willingness to support that is something that we really hope that can get in the hands of those kids who have and those families that are dealing with chronic conditions. So yeah, we love that diabetics can pick it up, and we hope that it'll be a big help for them. But we also hope that it'll help other people too. And we made sure that there's subtle lessons to be sure about diabetes management, but it doesn't dominate the theme. And we hope that it'll be a exciting adventure for anybody to be entertained by and read.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that other kids with different chronic illnesses, or really anyone of any age, could read this book and find pieces that may inspire them to share their story as well. I think that's always so important, especially being young and never wanting to be the different kid or the one who's singled out for anything. I remember that very vividly growing up. And so it's really inspiring to hear that. What did you guys learn along the way while writing this book?
Oh, that's a good question. Publishing a children's book is a lot like managing diabetes. It required a lot of teamwork. I mean, it took teamwork to make the dream work. And we started with this idea, and Rhodes put it down on paper. And then there was rewriting and rounds of edits and collaboration, and we had to work together and support each other. And so those skills that I think I've developed over the course of being with a diabetic for 15 years of encouraging positive behavior by being an example, maybe not talking it, but walking the walk, and trying to be supportive and helpful, but not nagging. All those skills that living with a diabetic I've developed have been really important to us in this process of partnering and working as a team. And just like diabetes, it's a whole team effort. Like, we got our kids involved, as Rhodes says. They vetted the book for us and made a really amazing focus group. And we involved their friends and extended family. So we relied on our full support system to bring this dream to fruition, in the same way that we as a family really work hard to make our support team work for Rhodes and his management of diabetes.
Yeah, very well put. The only thing I guess I would add is we learned a lot about publishing and about illustrations and about copy and what works and what doesn't along the way too. So there were a ton of
forget about all that.
ton of practical things that we learned too. But it was an amazing experience, and it was great to work with Alana and have an in-house partner. And just like with everything else, I thought we brought different attributes to the table, but that complemented the greater project.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you guys had a process of going through many different elements to your lives, and not just, the diabetes, but also book writing and publishing and focus groups and your children. And it's amazing everything that you were able to take away from it. Did you learn anything about like your diabetes specifically while writing this book that you may not have known, I should say? And in 40 years, I'm sure you've learned many things, but writing a book is a completely different journey, I'm sure.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, please.
Something that we wanted to do was start the diabetes technology for Rhodes in the story like a little bit back from where we are now with our treatments, so that hopefully the series will develop and Rhodes's technology will develop. And so it was fascinating to be writing a story where Rhodes was explaining to Alana in the book about pricking his finger, and he had to stop on this arduous journey to school, to where spoiler alert, they make it safely. But he stops and pricks his finger and checks his blood sugar on the street. And we were thinking, holy cow, Rhodes, you haven't had to do that. Thank God for, insurance and the technology and the researchers and your physicians and our ability to get access to it. You're on a CGM, and it's been a game changer for your blood sugar management. And do you remember back when you were a kid and you were blessed to have a pump at a certain point, but you were pricking your finger regularly and having to, this kid stopping on the street and cleaning his finger and checking his blood. And so we started there because then it gives us an opportunity for Rhodes to talk about going on a CGM and participating in clinical trials and all the awesome things that will happen as his technology develops. But it was a blast from the past for sure.
No, that is something we definitely learned. I mean, I also learned how hard it is to explain diabetes to a elementary school audience. And you have to assume that the audience would not, and in this case, Alana, wouldn't have any prior exposure to diabetes. So being able to, I wouldn't call it dumb it down. I would call it making it appropriate for digestion by a elementary school audience. Right. And then also, it's been incredible to see how the diabetics that we know have bought the book, how it provides a tool for them to tell their friends. It doesn't have to be a cold conversation. It can be, hey, here's a book I bought for you, or let's read this book together. So that's been another thing that I didn't really know, is how there really was this this need for this kind of resource in sort of the diabetes in the type 1 community.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, speaking from personal experience, I would have loved a resource like this 10, 20 years ago. It would have been a game changer. So I'm really excited for, kids now to be able to have this resource. And off of that, what do you think children will take away from this book? Because as you said, it's kind of bringing it down to a more digestible level for them. So what kind of main themes do you think they'll take away or want them to take away?
Yeah, I think one is let's make sure that people feel like they can talk about their disease. You can't manage it. I've said this before. You can't manage it by yourself, and therefore you need help, and therefore you have to tell people that you want to help you. So you should feel empowered to do that. You should also realize that with type 1 diabetes, it is a manageable chronic condition, and you can live a life to the fullest, a full life with no limits, even though you're type 1, with the right amount of preparation and the right amount of support. And these everyday activities that turn into adventures are supposed to be really good examples of that. I also hope that when Rhodes tells Alana, I hope that people also learn a lot from Alana's character. That when someone tells you something that is private, or that they're putting out a helping hand, whether they're insecure about it or whether they're maybe implicitly putting out a helping hand, they're putting out a helping hand. That's why they're confiding in you. And it's really important that you step up to the plate and you grab that helping hand and you give them a lift up. Mm-hmm. And I hope that to take that a step further, I hope what people will learn about the Alana character is beyond diabetes. I hope, as I said earlier, that the type 1 conversation is emblematic of other conversations that you can have about other chronic conditions. And so if you're on the spectrum, or if you have food allergies, as our children do, or you have asthma, you need to be able to go and talk to somebody about that. And the person on the other end of that conversation needs to extend their helping hand to your helping hand.
And Rose, I just want to add also that not only do we help children have those takeaways, but we hope grown-ups have those takeaways. Mm-hmm. And so we were absolutely writing with the intent that a type 1 parent could share this book with a grandparent who doesn't understand what type 1 is and what does the child need? What do you mean? I can't babysit, yet till I figure out how type 1 works. Or a grandparent who has type 2 and has fearful grandchildren. Well, what are you doing? What is that? And are concerned for their grandparent and their grandparent's health. Mm-hmm. This could be an avenue for them to share with grandparents, people of all generations, to have those conversations about a chronic condition or diabetes specifically. I mean, more than 30 million diabetics in the United States. We know that there's plenty of audience for people who want to share the diabetes diagnosis, normalize it, and really bring it into a conversation of how can I help you?
Yeah, and I guess I would say also that the adults who are reading about diabetes or learning about diabetes at the same time, I think can also benefit from our elementary explanation of the disease. So that it was certainly explained the way it is in the book for our primary audience. But if you're an older person or you're a person who has no exposure to it, that can also make a lot of sense to you. And I would even take it a step further than what Alana said about it being for a lot of other folks who are trying to deal with a lot of things. I would say that it's also to some degree targeted to parents, because it's really important that parents help their children understand that they need to be that good friend. In a world where we're very divided, in a world where bullying is pretty prominent, if a parent's reading this to a child and also explains to them that one of the underlying, if not overt themes of the book is to be that friend for somebody who's different, so that they don't feel so different and so that they can live life to the fullest. Hopefully that lesson's not lost on parents, and that they will then share that lesson with their children.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that idea that the parents also need a helping hand as well, because not just for their child that's been diagnosed, but they're also learning this whole new disease. And I can't imagine, caring for the child as well as being a helping hand, as well as trying to manage it with them or for them, depending on their age. And so it's really great to have, these resources for them as well. You had mentioned earlier that you are planning on writing some more books. Is this to continue like the Rhodes and Alana adventures, or is this in a different avenue?
Boy, we really hope so. So we wrote, our hope is to continue the Rhodes and Alana series. We have 3 manuscripts for the Adventures of Rhodes and Alana books to continue, and then ideas for many, many more. They come to us all the time because there are so many ways for the characters to develop, their friendship to develop, mm-hmm. and for Rhodes's use of technology and treatments to evolve with the times. Yes. We have this dream of Rhodes going on a class field trip in the next book, and he gets to go without his mom, which, as a type 1 is a really big deal, mm-hmm. Because he goes on a CGM. And so it's an opportunity for us. We're not doctors. It's not a medical conversation, but he's in an 8-year-old voice telling Alana about, I have this cool thing that monitors my blood sugar. I get to go on the field trip by myself because my mom's watching my blood sugar from home, and off they go. And so we really want to see the series move along with the technology and with the opportunities there are for diabetics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that you brought up like a field trip, because my mom went on many field trips with me growing up.
It was always my grandmother with me.
Yep. And so, yeah, if I could, go back and be like, don't worry, one day you'll be able to see like my blood sugar, or parents will be able to see their kids' blood sugars on field trips. It'll change everything. It's a great thing.
A little independence,
mm-hmm.
but not.
Right. You're there, but you're not there.
You're there,
right.
But you're not there. You're always there.
So where can people, follow you along on this journey with Rhodes and Alana? Where can they find your books and things like that?
Yeah, thank you so much. So we really do hope that the journey does continue, and that is our intent. And you can read more about us, about our journey, about this book at rhodesandalana.com is our website. And you can also find links to all the national online book retailers if you want to pick up a copy or an ebook.
Awesome. Well, I want to encourage everyone watching and listening that we are actually going to be doing a part 2 to this discussion, where you guys I'll tease a little bit that you will be reading a little bit of your book. So that'll be story time with ADA on National, I think, Story Day, like International Story Day, I believe. And so people should be on the lookout for that. And I'm very excited to hear more about that book. And I just want to thank you both again for joining me and telling me a little bit about your journey and this book. And I'm really excited for people to, have this resource, and for kids to have this resource going forward.
Thanks so much, Marley. We really appreciate you having us. And thanks for all the American Diabetes Association is doing for those of us in the diabetes community.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks again. Bye, everyone.
Okay.